My question for you is, did you like The Lighthouse? And if you did, what was your favourite aspect? That question is actually very relevant because The Lighthouse is kind of hailed as this fantastic film, and I finally got around to watching it. And on the one hand, yes, I can see that there's a lot about it that makes it very good. But on the other hand, there is one aspect of it, because of things that I enjoy from cinema, that made me not like it quite so much. The reason that kind of made my attention wander every now and then is that there's no real narrative, but that's kind of the whole point. The Lighthouse is about these two men who work in a lighthouse, two lighthouse keepers, and their day-to-day, very mundane, repetitive routine, and how they just have kind of each other for company, and how they have to try and stop themselves from going insane. And that lack of narrative is kind of the point. There's not much there to distract them. There's not much to stop them from hating each other's guts because they spend so much time with one another. So because there's no narrative for us, there's no narrative for them, and it's just watching them get on with their day. And I think that sounds a bit more boring than it actually is. But there's no kind of, this happens, this happens, this happens. We just observe. And it does work. I'm not going to say that it doesn't work, but for me, somebody who's very narrative driven, yeah, I love films that look beautiful, but if there's no narrative, for me, it's not going to be the best. So it's directed by Robert Eggers, and I will say that while I didn't think it was amazing, if you're the kind of person who enjoys watching a film for the cinematic beauty, and if you like the cinematography and the lighting and sound, I think this is one that you will really enjoy. And where people are hailing it as being fantastic, I can see it being pulled from those elements. First of all, as I'm sure you're aware, this is set in black and white, which is not wholly innovative for the 21st century. A few other films have done it, and they've done it successfully. But I try and think, if this had been shot in colour, would it have worked as well? And I don't think it would have done. Not just because it's set in the 1890s, but because it kind of gives it that slightly darker, kind of atmospheric quality. Makes it a little bit more sinister, that I think in colour it wouldn't have had the same effect. The use of sound is what I think makes this a cut above a lot of similar style films. The use of silence, the use of sound effects, it's just, in that respect, I can see it doing very well at the Oscars. By the time this video goes up, I think the Oscars will have happened. I could be wrong with that, I could be right, who knows. But the sound, I did think pretty quickly. I kind of personally identified the sound as being one of the aspects with this that I did think was pretty incredible. The character development was really interesting to watch, even though this is shot over kind of in the same enclosed environment. You would think, well, how can the characters develop? There's not much going on, but actually it does. And as one character develops and changes their actions, it has a knock-on effect on the other character, and it's like we're constantly climbing and climbing and climbing, which is highly suitable because it's a lighthouse, until you kind of get to that crescendo ending. And I'm not in the slightest going to bother telling you what that ending is, but I will say I didn't expect it. It is brilliant, and even though there was, for me, no beginning, middle, end kind of narrative, it was entirely worth it to get to that conclusion. It's very well acted. I think it's the second thing I've seen Robert Pattinson in that isn't Twilight or Harry Potter, and I do think we have a lot of these talks about how he's going to be playing Batman, and after watching this, and also the other film I watched him in that I can't remember, I can see him doing very well with that kind of role. It was very well done. So I can see that I'm talking very positively about The Lighthouse, and I did enjoy watching it. But as I said, I personally could have had a bit of a more meaty narrative, a few more solid plot points. But because it's more of a character study and it's more of an immersive cinematic experience, I think in that respect I would give it 9 out of 10. For the narrative or story, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 out of 10, because there is a little bit there as the character develops within their own kind of mini story. The Lighthouse, I'd recommend. It's not perfect for me, but if you like quality cinema and editing, I think you'll like it.